Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope that you're doing well. It is Tuesday, so it's time for a book tag video. The semi-autobiographical book tag. I am wearing a bit of my own autobiography and my daughter's. For this one, this was created by Mark over at Booktime at Elvis, who continues his hot streak of amazing tags, and I was kindly tagged by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. I will link both those videos in the description box below, so let's jump in. Prompt 1, what were the *1 books, fiction and nonfiction, on the day you were born? Well, #1 is A Perfect Spy by one of my favorite authors, John le Carré. Not my favorite John le Carré, though. Maybe I need to reread it. I don't know. Are there fans of A Perfect Spy out there? I would like to meet them, because I've never found one. I find people who will really defend Little Drummer Girl. I find people who will defend each portion of the Carla trilogy. I'm the guy who defends The Honorable Schoolboy. I've even found people who defend Absolute Friends or, of course, Spy Who Came In From the Cold. But I've never found anybody who defends A Perfect Spy. So if you are, please let me know. What's the window I need to be approaching this book through? Nonfiction, I couldn't find that, but I know the year I was born, the #1 nonfiction book was Fatherhood by Bill Cosby. I have not read that. I will add, this is a picture of my daughter on the shirt. She once took my sunglasses and put them on right as we were about to go for a hike, and then put her hands in her pockets and was like, "Dad, look at me. Dad, look at me." And I turned, she goes, "I'm cool." So we captioned it, and I captioned it here. And I sometimes wear this, I'll wear it to school and stuff periodically, so kids get a kick out of it. But I have not read Fatherhood by Bill Cosby. However, when I was preparing to become a father, my father passed away when I was 16, so as I'm trying to figure out, who are my role models to be a good father? It's been a while. My wife and I had a joke about how I was taking an aesthetic approach to fatherhood, and so I had these aesthetic role models for my father figures, which included Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird, and Walter Shandy from The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, and then if you've ever seen the show The O.C., Sandy Cohen. So, moving forward. Prompt 2, what are some books that spring to mind when you think of your childhood? Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH by Robert O'Brien. That was one where I definitely had seen the film, and then I discovered there was a book, and that was really exciting to be able to spend time reading it, and that there were a pair of sequels, I believe, Raxo and maybe RD or something. And then, of course, all of the Beverley, Cleary, Ramona books, and also, what is it, Dear Mr. Crenshaw or Dear Mr. Henshaw? Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. I didn't enjoy Fudge as much. Judy Blume was someone where Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing just hit me as a book, and I loved it. And I didn't enjoy all of her other books as a reader. Whereas Beverly Cleary was somebody where I read all of those. Alvin's Secret Code by Clifford Hicks. I don't know if anybody read the Alvin books. I enjoyed those. Definitely wanted to be a cryptographer for a while. I would walk around talking about ciphers. That will make more sense when we get to question 4. And the Goosebumps series by RL Stine. So I grew up in the 1990s and was in high school and college in the 2000s. So I was right at the target age for all of those Goosebumps books, and I read many, many, many of them. Prompt 3, school days were the best days of your life, apparently. Well, maybe that's why I still work in one. But you were forced to read some books you wouldn't have chosen for yourself. Which did you enjoy? I was very fortunate that I was in this small 7th grade English class when, so I was 12, 13 at the time, and the teacher had us read Macbeth and act it out, and we had so much fun. We did Hamlet after that, which was not quite as fun as Macbeth. There weren't witches. There was a duel, but there weren't witches, and we really got into Macbeth, and it was fun. And so that kind of got me through reading Shakespeare and Ibsen in high school when I didn't really understand what was going on and wasn't having much fun. I returned later on because Macbeth had lit a little fire for me. Prompt 4, were you independent or part of a pack at school? See question 2 where I talk about Alvin's Secret Code and ciphers. There was nobody else making codes in school. Did you join in the reading fads of the day or do your own thing? I ran cross country at a high school where they repeatedly were challenging for the North American football state championship. So I was very much an independent individual. Prompt 5, as you moved into your turbulent teens, and turbulent 20s, and turbulent 30s, can you remember your first experience encountering sex in a book? Again, this will be one I'm curious if anybody else has ever read this one. Richard Marcinko, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, he founded SEAL Team 6. He was a Navy SEAL during the Vietnam War. and he wrote, /ghost wrote maybe, an autobiography called Rogue Warrior, about his experiences as an adult, even as a teen, but as an adult, as a Navy SEAL. I read that. I also read some of his like ghostwritten men's adventure books later on, you know, around the age of 13, 14. That would probably be my my response for this one. So again, is any other Rogue Warrior readers out there? Prompt 6, what were some of the first kinds of nonfiction you encountered? Well, growing up in Arizona, I was fortunate in that I was probably too young to have seen it, but I definitely saw it in the theaters, and that was Tombstone, I Am Your Huckleberry. It was huge here. Schools had that as their like homecoming or prom dance theme. So yeah, Tombstone. Like there was a whole local Arizona section at the public library, the city library. So I would go spend time there. I would read books. So that was definitely an early window into nonfiction. Classical history, the Civil War, and then National Geographic. So my father was a lifelong subscriber to National Geographic, and I would get those and read those, and he kept them. So I would read those and go find, you know, oh, I want to learn more about ancient Rome. I want to learn more about whales. So I'd go find all of the issues that had whales on the spine there. I spent hours, you know, just searching National Geographic spines, and I would read those. So those were sort of my introductions to nonfiction. Whose bookshelf was more fun to raid, mom or dad? We kept all of them together, kind of like my wife and I do. We don't have separate, like, Jack and Megan shelves. We have our family shelves. And there's even a shelf directly across from me that has children's books that then line up against biographies. So they're all our family's books. And that was the way it was at my house. There wasn't one person's bookshelf. We were very ecumenical. Prompt 8 is the long one. How diverse is your library? We have, and I didn't, if this was something we didn't really have any, you know, we had one copy of it, that's not an exception that proves the rule. We were at 27 out of 35 of those options. You can figure out what the 8 are that we don't have. I will add that I don't really consider us antiquarian or rare book collectors. I realize I have like 2 shelves of Everyman's library books and multiple shelves of Library of America, but I buy all of those used at discount prices, mostly because they're anthologies that have great, you know, collections in them. So, prompt 9, what types of books do you find difficult to discuss? I don't like to dwell on really negative things, so I usually don't enjoy having drawn out discussions over books that I can't stand or that I didn't really enjoy at all. In part because I don't want somebody who does enjoy them to feel like I'm attacking them. I realize I said that after I smirked around A Perfect Spy. But I generally don't spend a lot of time belaboring and trying to attack a book, so that's not something I enjoy doing. Prompt 10, in what way do your life experiences shape your reading? Well, as a father, I find myself rereading a huge number of children's books and rediscovering children's books, ones that I didn't necessarily enjoy as much when I was a kid. Like, I was not a fan of Go Dog Go. I was more of a 10 apples up on top guy, yet my daughters love Go Dog Go. Okay, so we read that all the time. But in other words, because I have been running for, 25 years now, more than 25 years now. So I read books about runners, Perfect Mile. What I think about when I talk about running. The Murakami book, Kings of the Road, is a great one about the running boom in the U.S. in the 1970s. Born to Run, Dario and I were talking about that in the Sagalon group chat. It's a tangent. So I read books about running with just my background in terms of what I studied in college and what I teach. I still read a fair amount involving physics, involving mathematics, abstract algebra, a tour of the calculus, so real exciting fare. Prompt 11, in much the same way as our taste for food changes, so perhaps as our taste in books, how would you say your own reading tastes have evolved over the decade? I'm going to jump to question 13. If you have to choose one book or another, or author, to represent each decade of your life, what or who would they be? To answer prompt 11. So, for the first decade of my life, Watership Down by Richard Adams was a book that I really fell in love with. But I think the author I reread the most was Beverley, Cleary, specifically Ramona the Pest. Like, I definitely read it so frequently that sometimes the ink would rub off on your thumbs and you would get dark spots right across the center of the page as you're reading, and so it would have these like gray smudges across it. Her books were books like that for me, where I read them so frequently that they had those smudges across the center. Then in my teens, again, let me find a fellow reader of this book. Royal Blood, I believe it's by Bertram Fields, and it's this mesmerizing nonfiction exploration of the Princess in the Tower, Edward V and Richard the Duke of York, the sons of Edward IV, right at the end of the Wars of the Roses in the 15th century. Did their uncle Richard III kill them? Did Henry Tudor, Henry VII kill them? Did something else happen? And Fields just drops you into the world. He provides all of these fantastic ideas. He might be totally off base, but it was an engaging book to read at 14. And it kind of got me really interested in that period. I've read a number of books on the Wars of the Roses at this point. I can tell you all about them. But what I appreciated about that, and it was something that got me into rereading history much more intensely than I had sort of in grade school, was the idea that history could exist as an argument that wasn't determined and that could still be undecided. And that we could find books that posit one idea about the Princess in the Tower and books that posit something else that are mutually exclusive ideas. And being able to sort of read both and have to weigh them as an independent reader was really fun. It gave this sense of agency, of decision, again, while you're in school, being sort of told, like, this is how you do this. This is right, copy this down. And now you're getting to make your own decision as a reader, having to weigh the evidence. And that was something I really got into. I started reading nonfiction sort of from divergent perspectives, trying to sort of get a stronger, well-rounded perspective. It's just something I really enjoyed. In my 20s, two books that come to mind, and sort of just helping me discover what it was. If my teens were rediscovering why I loved nonfiction, my 20s were then rediscovering why I could love fiction. And those would be Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison and Possession by A.S. Byatt. Each has just this whole imaginative world that we get to inhabit. It has characters with imaginative consciousness in a way that I wasn't necessarily experiencing in everything I'd been reading in fiction throughout my teenage years and even my early 20s. And so these two are mainstays for me. And then now, probably my favorite living, like, active writer is David Peace. And so I read GB84 for the first time right around the time I turned 31. And I loved it. It was so dark. It was vicious. But again, it just entranced me. And then as I've prepared over the past couple of years, where I've, right around that time I was going over to take over a new math department. Next year I'm going to a new school. And so my non-example for how I introduce myself to my new team and try to get their input and collaboration is David Peace's portrayal of Brian Clough in The Damned United, where if you've read this or if you know anything about the tiny spell where Clough was in charge of Leeds United, his first day at work was not the way I ever try to approach a team that I get to work with. But I love that book. So prompt 12 now, let's go back. Unfortunately, we all feel down at certain times. Have you got a go-to book to pick you up? I mentioned, I think in the last tag, the Moody book reader, that for me that's the Psalms. Two others that come to mind would be the nonfiction of Virginia Woolf. She's just such a good writer that it helps me like calm down. Like I feel like my pulse and my heart rate and my blood pressure all just slow and settle. And I need help with that sometimes. So Virginia Woolf would be something like that, a writer like that. In terms of humor, it would probably be P.G. Wodehouse, any of the Jeeves books. Not so much a Blandings guy. Now, prompt 14, people are entitled to their own opinions, and they are. But how do you feel when people say that reading is boring, and what would you say in defense of reading? Now, I mentioned, I grew up a long-distance runner in the desert, and then I coached cross-country and track field in the desert. I teach mathematics, so the idea of somebody telling me that something I'm involved in or that I'm passionate about is boring has been part and parcel of my existence for a very long time, and it just doesn't faze me. Usually when people say, I hate math, I don't do math, I can't do math. I just say, I just don't think you've had the right math teacher yet. And maybe it's not me, but let's give it a shot. And so that's kind of the way I approach books. People say, I don't like reading. Well, maybe you just haven't read the right book yet. So I have a little classroom library at school, and I have just lots of different genres, lots of different reading levels, where it's maybe just find the right book, and then you'll discover that there's something to enjoy in reading. In terms of a defense of reading, well, reading allows us to discover and then mine the richest veins of humanity and the human consciousness, the imagination in our mind, and then all the emotion in our hearts, joy, love, pain, that whole pain over joy tag that was going around. So those are like the two of the richest aspects of human existence, and reading allows us to get into that, to discover it in ourselves, to discover the connections that exist with others. So yes, that's how I'll defend reading. Prompt 15, what was the #1 best-selling book on your most recent birthday? Well, it's whatever it is now. My birthday's not today, but it's whatever it is now. So whatever it is, I have not read it, because I don't really buy new books. In terms of tagging people, I'm going to tag a few people. Scott Danielson went to the same university I did, and we lived in the same dorm, separated by, I think, about 15 years, 16 years, maybe. So I'm going to tag Scott, because I'd be curious to learn more about his reading habits. Michael K. Vaughan, who I looked, and I can't believe he hasn't done this, but I want to discover what sent him down the speculative weird fiction wormhole, and when did that happen? Is this a recent phenomenon for him, or was that in the past? I'm going to tag AJ Dunn. Their channel is a great amount of fun, so I'd love to know what about AJ's historical reading habits. And then I want to get a librarian's input on this, so I'm going to tag Very Literary Carré, specifically to get sort of this sense of how do you become, when does a librarian become a reader? I think that's the question I'm wondering. So anyways, I hope everybody's doing well, and I am cool, almost as cool as my daughter. So have a great week, everybody.